Family and fellow soldiers, I'm the Professor, and this is the Moment of Truth. A moment of silence, please, for yet another casualty of white media mismanagement. Okay, moment's over. This is the year when all these white media surrogates like Essence and BET are getting checked by the black grassroots. All the years of grimy disrespect that they've been aiming at us is catching up to them all at once. The word went out straight from Butter Biscuit headquarters that BET is suspending both the Hip Hop Awards and the Soul Train Awards. See, this is all part of that white media conglomeration, all of that amalgamation. They're going to be owning the landscape. And look what they did with it. First of all, the white media money behind BET never had any soul, so they might as well stop having the Soul Train Awards. And as for the Hip Hop Awards, when you're reduced to having the Temu version of Heavy D, Fat Joe hosting your show, that's when you know you're scraping under the bottom of the barrel. Like all of these other sock puppet organizations that the white media has bought or propped up, BET's Hip Hop Awards has also been dying. Its viewership shrinking every year. In 2022, BET's Hip Hop Awards had 708,000 viewers. In 2023, that number slipped to 657,000 total viewers. Last year, it dropped to just 333,000. So their award show viewership, which used to number in the millions about 10 or so years ago, fell to less than half of what it was just a couple of years ago. You can't call that anything other than the audience jumping ship. That's how collapses happen. Slowly at first, and then all at once. And yet you got the white media who's trying to call the Hip Hop Awards a, get this, popular award show. They actually have the nerve to write that. See, this is the white media trying to conjure magic. They figure because they have such a pervasive influence that all they have to do is merely say something and people will believe it because the white media reaches so many people. And most of the time, they're right. But thanks to the black media, the white media's iron wall of lies has been pierced, and people are seeing the truth. The white media can call these shows popular all they want. It makes them look like fools. You don't cancel something that's popular. Things have gotten so bad for the BET Hip Hop Awards that they were reduced to having the show at a nightclub in Vegas. I'm not making that up. That's where they had it. Dry's Nightclub in Vegas. Well, that actually does make sense. Fat Joe has always been a lounge club level act anyway, so he belongs in some hole in the wall. If you're one of the poor souls whose lives are so empty that you actually watch BET's Hip Hop Awards, then you already know that Fat Joe's been hosting, or rather occupying the show, for at least the last 3 years, and his presence has also coincided with that decline. Now, he's not the one and only factor at work. BET itself has been in decline for many years now, but his hosting the awards show has clearly been received by black audiences as part of BET abandoning anything that's black. It's part of their loss of legitimacy. And Fat Joe's regular displays of arrogance has also been part of the problem that black audiences have had with that show. Instead of realizing that he's just a guest in a house that he didn't build, that neither he nor his community had any part in building or maintaining, instead of being humble and happy that he's been allowed to eat off of somebody else's table, instead, Fat Joe began running his fat mouth and talking like he made hip-hop, like his community made hip-hop. They should have rented a U-Haul and dragged his lard bottom out of there then, but of course they didn't, because disrespecting the black community was the entire reason that he was brought in the first place. You would never have Kendrick Lamar or any other black person brought in to host the Latin Grammys or any Hispanic-based show and then tell those audiences, well, y'all got black ancestry rights, so it's legitimate for me to be headlining this thing. These white media financiers who come in and decide that they're going to buy or set up some sort of so-called black media outlet or entity, they don't use those as platforms to bring black folks in to other people's venues and say, oh, well, we're going to have some black folks who are going to be headlining these things. They don't let black people bogart other people's stuff. But they always make it a point to have everybody else standing in front of us, well, for the shows and the audiences that the white media controls. And this is what put them where they are. BET's been struggling to remain relevant, and while they did bring in some big names for their hip-hop shows for the last few years, the reality is it takes more than just a few relevant names to make your show relevant. And after incident, that becomes show after show that eventually results in year after year of disrespecting black audiences, how do the former black viewing audience of the BET Hip Hop Awards even see the show now? Well, apparently they're not. And this loss of prestige also applies to BET itself. They might as well call the network bootlick entertainment for tethers because that's all it is. Hell, it was no great shakes back in the 90s, and for the last 20 years after Paramount bought it, it's become a joke, but not a very funny one. To have Fat Joe as the host is basically the white media equivalent of what groups like the NAACP has done, try to move away from being black and instead become some sort of deracinated platform for everybody else. These groups and organizations that run away from blackness, they're not doing it for ratings or for money. They always try to claim, we're trying to expand our audience. Well, as we see, they lose ratings and they lose audience and lose money by running away from blackness. The reason that they do it is because the white power behind these entities is trying to reduce the presence of anything black. This is a social agenda being funded and directed by white dark money. That's all it is. And now BET itself is a zombie network. Bob Johnson sold his soul to those white financiers and investors back in the day. It was only a matter of time before the black viewing audience finally realized that whatever it was that they hoped BET would become, it simply wouldn't. What's happening is that people are waking up to the scam, and it's because the black media is saying what people have been thinking all along, and people are realizing they're not alone, that they're not the only ones who have been looking at this mess and saying this is garbage. See, when people feel isolated, they think that their opinion simply doesn't matter, and when that happens, rather than resist, they become apathetic. Systems of oppression and control thrive on that. That's why isolating people and atomizing them is so important. When people figure that their resistance simply doesn't matter, that it's just them who's objecting to something, instead of tuning out or walking away, they're just as likely to continue going along with the same old, same old. But when you have people who are telling these disaffected masses that they're not alone, and that this status quo is intolerable, and that they all have to turn their backs on this nonsense, then that encourages people to act on their beliefs rather than just resign themselves to their fate. Never underestimate the power of telling people that they're not alone. And the white media is upset that their control is slipping. Their so-called black award shows that they put on, it's been nothing more than platforms to lampoon us and hold us up for ridicule. They put out this crap every year, and they stage manage this garbage. Why do you think the Source Awards has a brawl every single year? It's all part of the show. And please don't think the antics you see these Negro entertainers doing is spontaneous. They get their marching orders from the exact same people who pay for these sideshows. The white media doesn't just encourage them to act like fools, it also shames them whenever they don't. I remember back in 2006, the white media was up in arms because the MTV Awards that year didn't have some kind of over-the-top stupidity that occurred or some act of super raunchiness going on. Instead, they had the usual flash and trash garbage, but not the shock for the sake of shock crap that they usually would do. And the white media ran a story with the headline, MTV Awards Almost a Bland Affair. That's how they responded. And then under that, they reported that the MTV Awards had a, quote, increasingly staid reputation. For those who don't know, the word staid means sedate, respectable, and unadventurous. The only reason people watch award shows is because the people behind these shows spend a lot of money and time inventing the illusion that this or that award is important for some reason or another. Remember what I taught you about awards? They're a way for white power to bestow instant legitimacy on something. That's why they matter, at least under white supremacy. It's a way to give someone instant credentials. You have a group of white men who put on a show, claiming that they're going to recognize the best in their field. And then they heap phony praise on somebody and hand them some sort of little trinket award, and they say that this person contributed something truly valuable to the arts or sciences or both. Awards have no value if people look at them and they think that they're not important. Awards require a high level of respectability and normalcy in order for people to take them seriously. So unless your award is the Razzie Awards or some sort of intentionally silly parody award, then yes, sedate, respectable, and unadventurous is exactly what you want. Gee, isn't that why the same white media always complains after every MTV Awards show about whomever it is that does some raunchy or shocking act? Isn't that what they usually do? Except what they do is they're trying to get clicks and views off of controversy. Phony controversy, but controversy nonetheless. It's an awards show. They read off a list of arbitrary categories, then they say which one they think was the best, quote-unquote, and they give the person a little trophy and send them on their way. That's really all there is to an awards show. It's supposed to be staid, respectable, and unadventurous. But back in 2006, when the white media was complaining about how bland the MTV Awards was that year, they singled out 50 Cent of all people. Quote, 50 was almost zen-like on stage and offered little to excite the crowd. 50 Cent. He was up there to see somebody get an award. He wasn't performing. He wasn't on stage to do a set. But this is the white media's way of throwing shade at black performers who don't get out there and do what they're supposed to do, and calling them all but a has-been if they don't do some tomfoolery for the white media's amusement. This is what they do. They use the platforms that they own and control as a means to whip black people into doing what they want, as a way to shame them if they don't. And then you sit back after some awards show, watching some black entertainers in particular do some spectacular act of idiocy that makes you want to cringe and puke all at once, and you wonder, why does it always seem like black celebrities in particular are competing to see who can make the biggest fool of themselves at these award shows? It's because the white media indirectly or directly pushes them to do it, even though most of the time they don't really need that much of a push. These are the unwritten rules of the white media. And these Negroes you see trying to get famous, they know what massa expects of them. And the white media complaining about 50 Cent for not doing something controversial or something to excite the crowd is precisely because he didn't do something controversial. That's apparently what the problem was. This reveals what a moral fraud that these people are. Usually they make a big deal out of Madonna kissing Britney Spears on stage or some other thought, and they make a big deal out of Lil' Kim or whomever wearing pasties on stage. But when people act like they got some sense, or at the very least they don't go out of their way to act stupid at all, then the white media's having a problem with it. The award show is bland this year. Oh, these guys, they're getting more and more boring. See, the white media knows exactly what they're doing. The white media is the first to stoke the flames after an award show, talking about how shocking or surprising or how envelope-pushing such and such was. And you'll be sitting back going, oh man, can't black folks just get together? How come black folks be out here acting like this? That's what they'll have you doing, not realizing who's actually behind it. Whenever the white media comes in, they try to take something over and then they strip mine it and leave it for dead. And when you look at the BET Hip Hop Awards, this is the result. Well, at this point, the 2026 Hip Hop Awards will be hosted at Jim Clyburn's Fall Fish Fry, live streamed on the Shade Room, and be hosted by Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. You can't even be upset or disappointed at this point, because BET has been disappointing black audiences for decades now. This is yet another pathetic example of white media coming in and trying to invent legitimacy for itself by setting up or buying out some allegedly black entity and then taking a dump all over the floor. Well, there was Black News Channel, then EssenceFest, and now the BET Hip Hop and Soul Train Awards. All casualties of white media mismanagement, because black people have finally discovered that they were the actual power behind it, not these white money men. And when black people walk away, these things die. We have always been the source. If we decide that these things aren't operating in our interest, we can pull the plug on them all on our own. And that being the case, if we decide that these things shouldn't exist, they won't. It just took a few conscientious voices to remind us of the power that we've got in all this. And the white media's pathetic attempts to try to tell us that if these shows go away, if y'all ain't watching them, well, black folks have lost something somehow. Yeah, if we don't sit here and patronize these shows and these people who insult us and denigrate us and lampoon us and attack our dignity, well, if these clowns go away, we've lost something. That's the con game they've been running on us for the longest time, to get us to see one of their little sock puppet organizations as somehow being something that's integral to us, and that we lose something if their little scam operation goes belly up. And that lie is right up there with the bootlicks who are always saying, y'all gonna mess it up for everybody else, when what they really mean is we're gonna mess it up for them. Well, that's exactly what we're trying to do. Now, the head of BET has tried to claim that they're not canceling the Hip Hop and Soul Train Awards. Instead, he says that they're just trying to find the right place to put these shows amidst a changing media landscape. Well, if they're having so much trouble figuring it out, I got a suggestion. The right place for them to put it is in the trash. Good day, and be one. I'd like to take a moment to mention some of our contributors. Walter Wilborn, Sakina Collins, Jonathan Maynor, Kareem Lawless, and Deep I-904. Salute to them and thank you to everyone for listening, liking, and sharing this message. Black empowerment only exists because of you.